The CHUWI HeroBook is one of the cheapest Windows notebooks you can buy. While it usually costs around $270 US, you can often get it as a deal for around $200. For that, we get a 14-inch screen, an Intel Atom X5 quad-core processor, 4GB of RAM, and a 64GB internal storage. Well, how good can such a cheap notebook be? I'm NJ for mynexttablet.com, and that's what you will find out in this review. By the way, you probably won't be able to get the CHUWI HeroBook locally. Instead, you can import it from China using shops like Gearbest. They are the ones who sent me this review unit. Let's start this review with the design and build quality. On first glance, the CHUWI HeroBook looks like every other notebook. It has a mostly silver body with black bezels around the screen. As you might expect at this price, it has a full plastic body. The build quality is fine, but because it's plastic, it certainly does not feel high-end. The notebook is 2.1 cm thick and weighs 1,480 grams. Considering what it is, I think that's fine. On the left side we get a USB 3.0 Type A port, a connector for the power plug and an HDMI out. There's another USB 3.0 port, a standard headphone jack and a micro SD card slot on the other side. So yes, we don't get a USB-C port here. On the bottom is a very useful feature. We get an SSD extension slot down there, so you can insert an SSD without having to open the whole body. It can fit M.2 2242 and 2280 SSDs. Sadly, I don't have one lying around, so I did not test this. A speaker is hidden between the hinge of the screen. The sound quality is acceptable but not good. It's usable for YouTube, but like usual there's no real bass and voices can be scratchy at maximum volume. We also get a 0.3 megapixel webcam located above the screen, and as is common with this low resolution, the quality is pretty bad. Let's check out the keyboard. Since the CHUWI HeroBook is a 14-inch device, we're getting a full-size keyboard here. The layout of the keyboard is pretty good with large shift and decent enter key, as well as separated arrow keys. I've been able to type on this keyboard fast without having to get used to it. It's a normal, decent keyboard. With that being said, you will feel the difference between this and premium notebooks. The keys have a decent treble but feel cheaper than I'm used to from pricier laptops. It's hard to describe, but compared to those the keys feel a bit softer maybe. Anyways, for this price it's totally fine. Underneath the keyboard we get a touchpad with integrated mouse buttons. Actually, the touchpad is pretty good. It is big enough and it is a precision touchpad and supports all multi-touch gestures that are built into Windows 10. As I mentioned earlier, the CHUWI HeroBook has a 14-inch screen. It has an aspect ratio of 16:9 and a resolution of 1366x768. Well, on 40 inches that resolution is very low, and if you're used to looking at full HD screens you will notice that especially text and icons don't look as sharp. However, with this price I could live with that low resolution, but sadly the rest of the screen is not that great either. It is not an IPS panel. That means the viewing angles are not wide at all. In fact, especially when looking from the top, the picture breaks apart fast. Colors look fine if you sit directly in front of it. The brightness is alright for inside, but a bit too dark to use comfortably in direct sun. I guess the screen is alright if you don't want to spend a lot of money. This is clearly one reason why the HeroBook can be so cheap. If you need a great screen, this is not the notebook for you. CHUWI is shipping the HeroBook with an Intel Atom X5 E8000 quad-core processor. Additionally, we get 4GB of RAM and a 64GB internal storage and the SSD extension slot. The Intel Atom X5 E8000 is similar to the X5 8350 that we've seen in tons of Windows tablets a couple of years ago. However, the E8000 is just a bit more powerful. It's clocked at 1.04 GHz but can go up to 2 GHz. Well, as you can see in my Geekbench and Cinebench benchmark comparison, the performance of the CHUWI HeroBook is indeed just a bit better than the typical Atom X5 tablets. However, the performance is not great. This is one of the cheapest notebooks you can buy, and that also means it is one of the weakest performance-wise. In real life, the performance is a bit better than what I'm familiar with from those Atom X5 tablets. This E8000 is a bit faster, but I think a major reason for that is the low resolution screen, which does not need as much processing power. The performance of the HeroBook is fine for standard office work. I wrote this review and a lot of other articles using this notebook and Microsoft Word. That works totally fine, and Windows 10 itself runs well too. I also surf the web using Chrome a lot, and most of the time the performance is good enough for that, especially if you surf the web just lightly with a couple of tabs. However, when visiting demanding websites you can see some stuttering, and that includes OneDrive and YouTube, for example. You can watch HD videos smoothly, but when switching to full screen view and back, you might have to wait a second until it really does. Another app I tried is Adobe Photoshop. I've been able to install and run it just fine, and it is usable for occasional simple edits. However, let's be honest here, this is certainly not a great notebook to get if you want to use Photoshop a lot. It's fine for occasional things, but not more. It also seems like Photoshop would prefer a high resolution screen. You also shouldn't get the CHUWI HeroBook as a gaming machine. With that being said, there obviously are older games and games aimed at mobile platforms that do run on here. You can play games like Asphalt Extreme or Modern Combat 5, it runs fine, but more demanding games like Fortnite do not run at all. Let's get to its battery life, and that is one of the highlights of the CHUWI HeroBook. In my standard battery test it got a runtime of just over 9.5 hours. I'm always looping the same HD video at medium brightness and turned on Wi-Fi for these reviews. In my battery comparison chart you can see mostly tablets, but still, considering how cheap this notebook is, those 9.5 hours are a great result. Again, I think one reason why the battery lasts so long is the low resolution screen that is not that bright, so that has an upside too. Alright, that's my CHUWI HeroBook review. Is it a good notebook? Well, it obviously depends on what you're looking for, especially when considering its cheap price, the design, keyboard and especially battery life are very good. The performance is not outstanding, but it is usable for office work and light web browsing. However, I wish CHUWI would have chosen an IPS screen. You can get used to it, but obviously it's not a good screen. I can live with the performance, but the screen is a downside. I remember paying over $500 for tablets with similar and sometimes weaker hardware, but that was a couple of years ago. We've come a long way since then, and it's nice to see that you can get a decent notebook for around $200 now. So I can recommend it if you don't want to spend more and just want a simple notebook with a decent keyboard for some office work or so. It's usable for that. With that being said, if you spend around $70 to $100 more, you can get a laptop with an Intel Gemini Lake chipset and an IPS screen. The performance is noticeably better with those, and I think it's worth it to invest just a bit more for most. Alright, that's my CHUWI HeroBook review. If you have any questions, feel free to write me down below and subscribe to this channel for more videos, mainly about tablets and sometimes about notebooks or